What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of The Stand, Episode 2, Pocket Savior. Now, before we begin, hey, if you like what you see on this channel, of course, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like the video, awesome, hit the like button, and comment below on any videos you watch, including this one. Okay, so this episode was much better than the first episode. I will give people credit for just saying give it a chance. But with that said, this episode still wasn't that good. We're still getting flashbacks, flash forwards, everything's out of like flux. Nothing really makes a lot of sense. We are focused mostly on Jovan Adepo's Larry Underwood character, which Larry Underwood is a fascinating character. In the book, his kind of trajectory is really it's disturbing, it's dark. It leads to places where he basically gets himself in like serious trouble. But in this episode, it basically it forgoes all that outside of his friend who he betrayed, and it basically deals with him for the most part in this episode. It's like mostly mainly his episode outside of Lloyd Henrid, and basically what is happening is he is having drug problems. He has a band that is basically they're in the middle of Captain Trips and stuff like that. And basically his mother dies, which happens in the book. It happens a lot different in the original series that came out, back in '94. But I think the Jovan Adepo is doing a much better job of portraying Larry Underwood. I think he's much more of a fragile character than he was in the original series. But once again, I think he's underused. I think it's a character that has been underused in both miniseries because, like I said, it takes place where we see him in both the East Coast and West Coast. He flees to the West Coast, or he flees to the East Coast to be with his mom because he gets in trouble with the West Coast, thugs and whatnot. And here it's all gone. There's nothing there. And instead of having Nadine Cross be kind of mixed together with Rita Blackmore we finally get in this series as her own character, and it's Heather Graham playing her, of course. And there is a kind of cool, fun, unique perspective between the two because they're such different people. Larry Underwood's on the rise until the Captain Trips happens, and of course Rita is, of course, a magnet of the rich area in New York. And it's basically the how he gets out of New York. They come up upon a couple of thugs who want to use Rita in some really disturbing ways. There's a lot of disturbing stuff that happens in this episode between, what happens, of course, to Lloyd Henrid, and then, like I said, there's a segment where basically Larry is talking to this old man who survived, and he tells him what he's going to Yankee Stadium. It's like, do we really need to talk about that? It's like, there's some things that just don't need to be in a series like this anymore. That just, if this was in the book, why? It's stupid stuff, and it gets repeated later on. And of course, Rita and Larry have relations and stuff like that. But the problem is, like, it kind of ends there. It ends up with them getting out of New York City. It ends with, Larry confronting his ghost mother who has rats coming out of her and stuff like that. And then it flashes forward to Boulder, where there's a settlement, kind of like Walking Dead, where there's a settlement set up. We, of course, see Stu, who is taking Lloyd to see, of course, Mother Abigail. We see Nadine talking to, of course, Franny Goldsmith. Larry talks to Harold. And it's just, this episode is much more tightly wound together than the last episode was. But like I said, we don't need the Boulder stuff right now. Leave this to like the last half of this series. You're giving us so much information that if you've never read the book or you've never watched the miniseries, you're not going to have any idea. You're like, at one point you're in Boulder with Larry Underwood, and then the next point you're in New York, and it just flashes back and forth, and there's nothing consistent about what is going on. I was getting so frustrated watching this episode just for that simple fact, that knowing that the episode is much better, but it's like, once again, we don't really know much about actually the Captain Trip stuff is a little more prevalent in this. We see what happens to Larry's mother. We see like the effects of like the neck swelling and stuff like that. And it really hits close to home on the fact of the whole, COVID situation that we're dealing with. But it's just, once again, it's just a very underdeveloped, a weird, very kind of convoluted episode that just, we're getting to the Nadine stuff, which we don't know anything about. Nadine has this whole interesting back hit story to herself of how her and Joe met Larry Underwood, and none of that is explored at the moment. So we have no idea who these characters really are. We know Nadine has some kind of attraction to the Randall Flagg character, which we find out later on if you know anything about the book or the TV series that was in '94. But the other kind of The other kind of problem in the room, or the elephant in the room, is the fact that we got Amber Heard playing Nadine Cross, and Nadine Cross is a huge character in this book. And with everything that's happened with Amber Heard, it really feels uncomfortable watching her play Nadine Cross, just for the simple fact that it almost fits her to a T with what she did with Johnny Depp. But having Amber Heard in this series is just, it's kind of makes it a little icky when you try to watch it. Whether people really, can get on board with that is depending on how far you can look past the situation that was involving her and, of course, Johnny Depp. Watching her kind of character come in, like I said with Joe, it's just nothing about that story makes any sense, because if you don't know how these characters met, then what's the point of these characters? And that's a lot of these first two episodes problems, and they're just kind of throwing us into characters that have no kind of plotting to them, no kind of depth to them, and they're just there to be characters that if you read the book, you know exactly who they are and what their places in the stand is. But like I said, with Nadine and Joe's the little kid in the story. There's no explanation of why they're there. They just happen to meet Larry Underwood at some point during the trip. And like I said, the nice thing about the book is you get that explanation before you don't think you get to Boulder, Colorado, or Hemingford Holmes till like almost halfway through the book, and it makes it for a very confusing structured plot. And it's just it's such a very kind of irritating thing to watch what Josh Boone and Benjamin Cavell have come up with. But like I said, it's a much more tightly packed episode, because we also get like the introduction to Ray, who is actually now a female character in this story. We get Nick Andros, who has a patch over his eye, which I think he had a patch over his eye in the book, if I remember right. It's been a long time since I read the book, but we finally get his character. I'm assuming we're going to learn more about him and Tom Collin later on the story. But this story, like I said, outside of Larry Underwood, is also focusing on Lloyd Henrid, who becomes the right-hand man to Randall Flagg, and his story is pretty on point to what we know from the book, where he holds up a gas station. One of the people that they hold hostage dies, and he gets sent to jail, where he basically suffers for quite a while, ends up eating his leg, ends up eating a rat, and he ends up being saved by Randall Flagg, who sees the darkness in his heart, because Randall Flagg is crux of this story, as well as the crux of the whole entire universe that is Stephen King's Dark Tower universe or whatever. But Nat Wolff plays Lloyd Henry, and he does a pretty nice job as the character. He's weird, he's creepy, he's a guy that's at his wits' ends. He's probably gonna die if Randall Flagg doesn't save him. And Nat Wolff does a pretty decent job. Like I said, having him come out. He was part of Josh Boone's, I think, Fault of Our Stars or something like that. So that's another thing. Nick Andros was, of course, in the New Mutants, the guy who's playing Nick Andros, and of course Nat Wolff was, of course, in his Josh Boone's first film or whatever. So it's cool that they get parts in this series, but. Like I said, Lloyd Henry's role in this entire story is actually somewhat well told. We see him in prison and stuff like that, and we see him doing what he does. But I mean, outside of that, it's just a very convoluted episode. I'm gonna give it like a 6 out of 10, because it's much more interesting. I think Larry Underwood is much more presented than he was even in the 94 series. But like I said, there's still a lot of stuff missing that I wish was there. And once again, the whole Boulder community is just kind of thrown in there for no reason. It doesn't have any context. I still don't understand why Whoopi Goldberg's in this series. She's just doesn't fit the part at all. It just feels very distracting, and it's a series that is, you're either going to have to just deal with the fact that it's not going to be what you remember from the book, which I think is where it's headed, or you're just not gonna like it. And I'm kind of in the middle. I really am. I want to love the series, but I'm struggling to find any purpose to why this series is even happening. So, but that's it. That's gonna be my take on this episode, Pocket Savior. Like I said, it's a 6 out of 10. It's much better than the first episode. It does a lot much better stuff with the Captain Trips. But it still doesn't give us enough information. It still doesn't give us a lot of information on these characters. So I know I repeated myself like 4 or 5 times, but I have to, throw that in there, that these characters need more exposition to understand this 1,000-page story that is being converted into 9 episodes. And this episode was actually longer than the first episode, and it still feels half full. So, but that's the unfortunate nature of where the series is headed. Unfortunately, what I feel. So. But with that said, that's my take on Pocket Savior. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Do you agree it's much better than the first episode? Are you in the same boat as I am, where you feel like it's still just not enough. But anyways, like I said, we'll see what happens. But let me know in the comments below. But anyways, if you like what you see on this channel, of course, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And happy holidays, guys. Merry Christmas as well. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.